and it's a compounding effect. Not only do you have adipose tissue, which will have more aromatase enzymes, subsequently meaning that you aromatize more of your testosterone into estrogen, but whoops, alright, that's really loud. So, hey everybody, I'm Damon, and I have a little bit of an interesting video as sort of like a comeback. I have a lot of YouTube comments to get to. I have a lot of stuff on the website, a bunch of emails, but I've been pretty busy. So I found this guy's channel actually from, his name is Jorge Fernando. He's a gorgeous looking dude. I found him from his like how to get an epic stubble sort of video. So I went through, obviously because I'm pretty interested in the beard stuff. I personally don't like having a beard, but it's one of those things like the minoxidil that I've just been able to passively accrue pretty effortlessly. I don't really have to derma or do anything at this point. I just apply the minoxidil and go through. And I went through the rest of his channel because I was pretty interested in, you know, obviously what he does, because again, he looks phenomenal. He's a very beautiful man. And I saw this and I saw, is this going to cure my gyno without surgery? Long story short, no it is not. I have not fully watched the video. I don't know what his protocol is going to be, but I figure this would be a pretty interesting topic. Okay, I was going to go ahead and like the video just to start it out, but it says, my plan to use more plates, more dates, Raloxifene protocol to see if I manage to reduce it without surgery. So right off the bat, we can go into this knowing that he's relatively knowledgeable-ish about it, because he says right in there, he wants to reduce it without surgery. You can't permanently get rid of gynecomastia that's developed through puberty or has been with you for a very long time. You can get it practically down to like nothing. Like when I've had my experiences with gyno, I've gotten it to the point where it was literally, it felt like maybe a pebble or like the size of a tiny pea, which is pretty common, especially if you don't get like that hard bulbous knot, and especially if you keep your prolactin and everything else, including the massive surge of estrogen that you're sensitive to. The way that I would deal with it was I would take 10 milligrams of Novodex, split in the morning with a high-fat meal, split at the afternoon with another meal, and with that I would just take my typical daily. Back then it was 10 milligrams of Cialis, now it's 5 milligrams every single day. I prefer Cialis over Viagra for some of the additional benefits that I've talked about with its peripheral phosphodiesterase families. I talk about it a little bit in the Viagra or Cialis as a PED or performance enhancing drug in one of my previous videos. It's the one where you have the blister strip of Cialis and Viagra, and it's me flexing the thumbnail. Go watch that video if you haven't already, but enough about me. I think this intro has been about 2 minutes, so let's see what Jorge has to say about it.
Having a proper big bro moment. I'm going to talk to you guys about what I consider to be one of my only real physical insecurities. So as a lot
Very
of you
reasonable.
guys know, I used to look like this. I was fat, okay? One thing that you guys don't know...
And before he gets into this, I just want to say that, yeah, when you're younger, it's especially more apparent because as you're going through puberty, you have a higher stimulation of endogenous testosterone production through your testicles. And as you slowly accumulate more fat, those fat stores, those adipose tissue cells, are then going to be storing more estrogen, and it's a compounding effect. Not only do you have adipose tissue, which will have more aromatase enzymes, subsequently meaning that you aromatize more of your testosterone into estrogen, but being fatter means that you typically have more estrogen to hold, and that makes you bloated more, and it doesn't make you get fatter just by holding the water exactly, but it certainly gives you an unappealing look.
During my teen years, I actually went to an all-boys grammar school. Now, that sounds cool and everything until you understand that boys, they're dicks. They are actually dickheads. Young teen boys all
brutal.
find a way to
We were brutal growing up.
It's a pool of raging hormones and testosterone. And
Yeah.
it's just not the nicest environment to be in during your school teen years. So where am I going with this? Fat, kinda ugly, bad hairstyle, bad body composition, bad everything. George.
Now look at you, there's hope. There's hope for everybody. Oh,
Would get
good genetics.
changed in the changing rooms. And there was one thing that people would pick on me for. And that one thing was already in my head from before being picked on. But it really stuck with me, man. One thing that to this day still bothers me. That one thing is called gynecomastia or gyno, and for all of you guys who are lucky enough to not have to know what that is,
very lucky.
It's basically man boobs.
Yeah,
so
it's
I actually made quite.
So I keep freezing on like the most unflattering pictures, which is very strange. Much better. So it doesn't exactly give you boobs like you're a full-blown woman, but over time, over a long enough period of time, if it's untreated, it essentially is boobs, because gynecomastia forms with estrogen to form literal breast tissue, and as you accrue breast tissue and it keeps compounding and it's not being treated, it can spiral out of control. I'm going to go through Google and see if I can pop up a couple pictures somewhere up on the screen here next to him to show you what it looks like maybe a before and after of the surgery.
On this channel where I have been topless. I even have an accountability playlist on my channel where I post every single week my progress or my physique, and nobody has ever mentioned it. And that's because it's barely noticeable. And this one insecurity is quite literally something that nobody ever talks about. Nobody ever notices. It purely just affects me.
And it's really bad because, especially with like body dysmorphia or just like nagging insecurities, it's typically only the things that you'll see. Like some people have one arm or, you know, one body part that's bigger than the other. Like, oh, this strap is bigger than the other. This one's bigger than the other. But you also have to realize that nobody really pays as much attention to you or really cares about you as much as you do. And as a result of that, you can really get in your head and you can have this outfield perspective where you have this perception of you predicated on the possible perception of others.
Which is kind of the only opinion that actually matters. But yeah, when I say man boobs, you can have man boobs for different reasons, right? You can have
from being fat,
man boobs because you're just overweight.
Fair.
Luckily,
overweight's a better word.
The case for me anymore. Or you can have man boobs because you have a literal gland in your chest, which can be caused by hormones during puberty, which was my experience due to my probably poor eating habits and my just imbalance of hormones as a teenager. You can also get the same exact thing from using steroids, which I haven't done, but a lot of people who do use steroids also mess with their hormones and cause themselves to grow some sort of gland tissue in there.
Yeah, and again, the reason that happens is, man, I really am just doing a really good job of not pausing at good points for him. But the reason that happens again is because you have a super physiological amount of testosterone being converted into estrogen. Now, the way you can mitigate that while also taking exogenous synthetic androgens is by a few different means. You can do things like DIM plus calcium deglucuronate to help with glucocorticoid. Man, it's such a hard word to say. Glucocoordination. That'll help with the breakdown and a lot of the peripheral factors, which will lead to excess accumulation of fields. Like if you have too much estrogen and it's not being managed and you have poor liver health, that's certainly not going to help, because your liver does help with the production of sex hormones as well. With that, though, managing it with things like DIM to help with a favorable balance of estrogen, especially if you're estrogen sensitive, could be of concern. And if you're not really sure about estrogen sensitivity, it just means how receptive the actual estrogen receptors in your body are. So someone could have, let's just throw out like middle or lower middle reference range levels of estrogen or estradiol. With that, they could be experiencing gynecomastia, and that would be atypical perhaps for somebody with very high estrogen, someone, you know, who's very far out there actually in the upper territory of maybe even super physiological estrogen, but their testosterone to estrogen ratio is so high that it somehow doesn't affect them. It's just individual specific, and your propensity to actually have those estrogen receptors slowly over time accumulate a lot of estrogen in your breast tissue. Again, people will do things like Nolvadex on cycle. People will take things like Letro, Raloxifene. There's a lot of things that people will do to do that as well. Some people also do like microdosing or more frequent dosing to prevent a bolus administration of testosterone all at once. And a bolus dose of testosterone, that again is individual specific, but you know, if someone's doing a single jab of 500 milligrams of pure testosterone versus someone who would space that out every single day or more frequently, your body can handle that much more tolerable in some cases and not give you so much all at once. And the reason that that would be preferential is because you're utilizing the same amount of testosterone, but it's not all being converted at once. It being spaced out depending on the ester, the decarboxylase enzyme activity, which will then slowly over time perhaps cleave out different esters and clearing your body at a different time. Maybe you get, instead of 500 milligrams of pure testosterone all at once, converting into estrogen and only giving you, for sake of example, like 400 milligrams of pure testosterone after it has been converted into estrogen. If you space that out over the course of, let's say, the week, maybe you have 450 milligrams of active testosterone, only 50 milligrams of that is being converted. These are arbitrary numbers, by the way. This isn't saying definitively if you break this up on microdose every single day, that's the conversion amount that you'll get. Obviously, ester weight, obviously injection frequency, the amount of sex hormone binding globulin that you have, as well as additional factors like sleep, as well as vitamin nutrient status is also relatively important. Now that he's sort of broached on gyno, I want to see what his Raloxifene protocol actually is.
Anytime soon? Definitely not. So if I'm not going to do the surgery, then how am I planning on getting rid of it? And the reality of the situation is, what I'm about to talk about probably won't work, and I have zero expectations of it working.
But it's a long shot.
There is anecdotal evidence out there that there's another way that isn't surgery, and of course to do drugs. I actually found this information out from More Plates, More Days, which is a channel I really enjoy watching. He talks a lot about gym and biochem, just all this interesting biohacking stuff. I really like his content, and he kind of touched on this, so I've done my own research since.
By the way, Derek, moreplatesmoredays.com, incredible resource. Him, Vigorous Steve, Leo Longevity, a handful of other channels, incredibly great information, especially Vigorous Steve. Steve is slowly starting to pick up a lot of traction. I mean, he has like literally hundreds of times more subscribers than me, but if you guys have not heard of Vigorous Steve, highly recommend that you check him out. He is incredibly knowledgeable, and he makes a lot of topics talking about this specifically because he also has a very high-level experience of gynecomastia, and I'm sure he probably has a video talking about this exact same sort of thing.
But I will be following his protocol. The drug in question is Raloxifene.
Oh, he's got like a pharma brand dose of it.
Without getting into too much detail, because this isn't really a channel where I talk about science behind stuff, I'm going to take 60 milligrams of Raloxifene every single day for 10 days, followed by 30 grams a day until it's pretty much reversed.
Milligrams.
Well, as I'm nearing the end, I'm going to taper it down to 15 milligrams so that I don't get a rebound effect when I come off of it. It's also really recommended that you take 500 milligrams of calcium to combat some of the side effects. This one actually also includes 200 IU of vitamin D.
Yeah, and that's actually a great point too. In a lot of these other videos, you're going to hear me talking very frequently about the necessity for things like the synergies behind vitamins, like obviously vitamin D3 with K2, with vitamin C, with vitamin A, vitamin E. A lot of the fat-soluble vitamins K, A, D, and E are very important, especially for people who are taking sex hormones, whether that be estrogen, whether that be testosterone, or any of its derivatives, solely for the fact that your body is going to be spent using a lot of these vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, specifically for these sorts of things. Now, the reason you would have calcium and vitamin D together, bone health typically, that's where you can have that. And the reason that you taper off to prevent a rebound, like he's mentioning, is because one of the peripheral sort of utility of Raloxifene is that as it is being introduced, you have estrogen antagonist and agonist activity. A lot of it with Nolvadex, you'll see it's typically that, okay, it is a selective estrogen receptor modulator, which works specifically on breast tissue, but you also do get some of the benefits like the additional, I believe it's bone mineral health, which helps combat osteoporosis in older women, which is why it is typically championed as an anti-breast cancer drug for women. But as you take more and more of this, you have a negative feedback loop, which will cause, like, with Clomid, you'll typically see people talk about, like, estrogen rebound, especially with this as well, but that's just because you are going to have something which is going to be dealing with specific estrogen receptors, and as you just completely cease it all at once, you're going to have an influx, or not exactly like influx, like it's like night and day difference, but what can happen is your body has become so used to having something blunt this impact of estrogen that once this estrogen is actually able to get into the exacting site, that you might see that there is a little bit of additional water retention, or that there's additional bloating, or that these receptors are being now attached by actual estradiol, meaning that some of the work that you have been working against actually gets done again. And this is typically the rebound. Now, typically when you have the rebound, it's not so severe that it's actually like 2 times as worse, but if you don't taper out slowly and then slowly allow this drug to metabolize and clear, you can see that it becomes more apparent again, and then people freak out from that.
But you should also be taking 5,000 IU of vitamin D. I've got the 200 with the calcium, and I've got 4,000 here separately.
So with vitamin D specifically, you can actually have too much. I don't know if a lot of people really talk about this. I have an old infographic from way back when where I talk about vitamin D also being a hormone, vitamin D3 being cholecalciferol, which is not a vegan derivative, by the way, not a vegan derived form of it, unless you get vitamin D3 from lichen. I have a video on that somewhere I need to post at some point, but essentially vitamin D, if you have too much of that, you need to also be in check with your calcium, because that is one of the things that regulates the amount of calcium that you absorb, as well as having vitamin K2 as well to help with clotting factors, as well as some additional benefits of things like zinc as well. There's a lot that goes into keeping a normative balance. This isn't saying that you need to cap off your vitamin D at like 10,000 IUs per day or anything additionally. It's that when you have a sufficient amount of vitamin D from getting sunlight or having a food that's fortified with vitamin D, and it's not aragocalciferol, which is going to be less bioavailable or less impactful in terms of your blood scores, that you need to have these additional supplements to also help offset any potential deleterious effects of it as well.
Doesn't quite make 5,000, but I do get some vitamin D from other sources, such as my healthy diet. So I am really hoping that I don't get any side effects. Most people seem to not get side effects, but occasionally you do hear people talk about, I had to get off of it because of the side effects. We shall see. Today is day 1 of taking Raloxifene. Wish me luck.
I'm going to skip this part because I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to show consumption of drugs on YouTube.
Actually working. The good news is it's quite cheap, and compared to surgery, I'd much rather give it a try. Just with the...
That is very true, and there's a lot of resources where you can find this sort of thing. However, I will say, I don't know what country he is in. If you're in the United States, this is a controlled substance, and as with anything that I even recommend on the blog in specific areas on the website, you'll see that I have a disclaimer saying that make sure that anything that you purchase is legal to import and is not a regulated substance or an illegal substance in wherever you're getting. Obviously, with international sources, you know, I don't think that he's in America. He might be anywhere else where you can just go over the counter and pick this up and just have that on hand, though it is a relatively cost-effective means of mitigating this, much more than surgery. However, if you do have the pocket change for surgery, or if you're very fortunate in that you have insurance through a company that will actually pay for the surgery, even better, because that is a permanent solution. The rest of these are not. And I actually don't know if he has, this is only in May, I don't know if he's actually made a video of that as well. I'm actually going to go ahead and subscribe to the guy because I do genuinely enjoy his content. For now anyway. So let's see. It's only been 2 months and he hasn't updated it as well. I'm going to go ahead and check out his Instagram. Maybe he's made an update there, but again. So you can just see this man is just straight up handsome. Like, he is obviously a model. Very great in terms of what he does with his beard, his hair, style. His headshots are just remarkable. Doesn't look like he has anything, but I am very interested to see his progress with this as well. And he apparently has a different name on Instagram. It is Jorge Felietto. Jorge has a different Instagram handle. I'll go ahead and put this in the video down below. 160k. Wow, really? 160k on YouTube and 60k on TikTok. That's great. Cheers. Men's hair, beard, and lifestyle. So yeah, if you guys want more lifestyle stuff, please feel free to reach out to him as well. He obviously posts more content than just being incredibly handsome. I'm sure he has some PR stuff, some stuff that he personally recommends. Looks like he does some sponsorships with clothing as well. So if that is something that you're very interested in, you know, being very stylish, looking very fashionable, looks maxing sort of thing, this is obviously a person that you guys should be getting some information from, not some guy who's just wearing a tank top that makes him look kind of big because it's like a youth medium, right? So again, hopefully you guys have found this relatively interesting. Hopefully Jorge is able to see some of the results that he was actually hoping for at the 60 milligram mark. I think that is completely reasonable to see a reduction in it as well, especially with 10 days of prolonged utility, as well as tapering down to the 30 and maybe even to the 15. I don't know if he's going to quarter that down and get that in there, but if he's using the 30 milligram, which is a typical normative dose, or if he's using the 20 milligrams, I think he'd probably be using the 30 because he mentioned 15. I think that reasonably, as he tapers down after 10 days into maybe his second week, there should be a significant enough reduction for him to make a determination on whether or not it was good or not. But this is relatively exciting, so I hope the best for him. It has been a couple months, so maybe we'll get an update on that. Maybe I can do an update on this video as well. But again, if you guys do enjoy this sort of content where we sort of go through and react to videos, let me know by leaving a comment down below. Again, feel free to subscribe. And before I give you guys a whole sign off, I just want to make it very apparent that there's going to be a lot more videos coming on the blog as well. The blog is going to be it kind of goes in this back and forward stage where I want to give out a lot of information versus I want to make this stuff as impactful and succinct as possible. I do like sort of the talking format, and I do really want to start bringing in more guests into the channel where I can sort of have like more conversational approaches to things as well, sort of getting out more loose and fluid thoughts instead of trying to structure things out, because I obviously don't do very well with structuring things out, because again, I don't have any notes. I don't have anything where it's just like, hey, so we have all of this information here, I'm reading off of like a script or anything. It probably would help with coherence and helping me not make as many mistakes, but I think that it's very important to know things inside and out, and to also be able to give anecdotal experience. And I feel like whenever I do follow a script, I map things out, I sort of overlook things, or I don't get off on little side tangents, which may have like peripheral benefits, like, oh, here's all this stuff. But again, like if I wouldn't have been talking about the vitamin D and the calcium and everything else, we wouldn't be talking about, the synergies behind things like glucocoordination, as well as some of the other benefits either. And with that, I also feel like there is a lot to be said about some of the just blabbering on, which kind of does help over time reinforce a lot of things. Like I'll probably mention probably like the same 5 or 6 different things, and just people that watch my videos will really have that hammered down. And for people who don't watch a lot of my videos, they probably will just get a gem of information that they don't see until later they come back, and then they realize, okay, well, this is this, and this. I find this in all the research that I read as well. As I look more into things start to compound and they really solidify. So I think that's incredibly beneficial. But on that note, we will be wrapping things up again. If you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the comment section down below. Any feedback you guys have is greatly appreciated. And again, if you guys want a little bit more information, a little bit of more outside peripheral posts to just my YouTube content, mindlesseasy.com, it's the website that I run, which has some additional sort of insights into things. I do talk a little bit more about basic level fitness at the moment, some additional supplements which I think are incredibly beneficial. I talk about L-citrulline, creatine, as well as things like DIM in a little bit more length. I have some posts which I am just going through the archives, touching them a little bit, and getting you guys more current information, as well as I present things as I learn them and as I feel like I have a good understanding of them over time, with new science, new literature, and more optimal practices that are reasonably achievable for most people. That's something I'll put out there as well. I don't like to get down to like the hyper specific like world's best case scenario, because I do think that there is a gradient between like what is optimal and what is practical, and somewhere in the middle is something that will work for most everybody, that doesn't have to be specifically curtailed to one individual and everything that works for them. Because like I mentioned earlier, everybody's different, people have different sensitivities, people have different dietary lifestyles and etc. So until next time, toodles.